thank you again for everybody. We have about 36 people here viewing, so thank you for joining us, and thank you for those who joined us in the first session. So welcome to the Makerspace Design Challenge with the Tech Interactive, and Amy Booker is going to lead us in just a second. So my name is Gustavo Morales. I'm the CDE LMI Program Manager, and I'm going to be the host for this breakout session. During this session, you are encouraged to ask questions and share comments in the chat. Everyone has access to the chat today, and I will be moderating the chat to help your presenter field your questions. They'll also take a quick few moments to look at the chat and answer any questions directly. Everyone has, you will see the link to the session's presentation at the top of the chat. Feel free to follow along and click on the link. As far as sharing your video and audio, I have some special instructions. Your virtual platform, or this virtual platform, allows for a limited number of people, actually it's 9, to share their video and audio at one time. So there's a blue button on your screen you can click if you want to be added to the queue and to ask any clarifying questions or share your screen. Lastly, you will be automatically start in a gallery view, and you can control the display by clicking twice in order to make that small tile bigger. So you might see that there's a presentation being shared. You can click on that twice or any of our tiles twice and it'll be bigger. Feel free to play with that now. And I'm excited to introduce Amy Booker and Rick Schertle as they start their breakout session. So welcome and thank you.
Thanks. So for those of you who were here earlier, Rick is a Makerspace teacher who shared some of his strategies and tools and techniques. And so I'm going to take the majority of this time, but he's going to help me with prototyping during some parts of it. So my name is Amy Booker. I'm from the Tech Interactive in San Jose, and I'll share my screen again. You can double click on the slides if you need to see them larger. So I'm a professional development specialist there as part of our Bowers Institute, and I mostly work on resources for educators, parents, and students. So throughout this session, I'm going to share a number of resources with you, and I'm always looking for feedback. So if you have tips or ideas on how we can improve them to make them more useful for you or your students, please let us know. So today our goals are to do a simple design challenge. You're going to have a chance to do one during this session, and you'll have a chance to share out at that time. So some of you are willing to be brave and put yourselves on camera, you can do so at that time. I'm also going to try to share some resources for hands-on learning in a virtual environment, since that is in many ways the reality for many of us right now. So for those who don't know, the Tech Interactive is a hands-on science learning center in downtown San Jose. This is our beautiful building, and we are no longer in it at the moment. So it is where we would typically be working, and we would have a lot of hands-on materials for students and children and families to come engage in. We have also been doing, even before that building existed, a Tech Challenge signature program, which this is last year's theme, Launch, Land, and Expand, which is sort of a formal event for students to respond to a challenge. And this year we will be doing the event virtually, so all of you across California can sign up to participate, and we'll be releasing information about that in October. We've also been doing a number of hands-on science learning experiences with students in the school setting as well as out of school time programs. So you can see that photo in the middle is an example of something students built in one of their summer programs. It's a device that when it's dropped, it releases something that will roll, and it's part of one of our design challenges and sort of an example of how students can build and tinker with things with limited materials and recycled items. So, and again, if you're looking at the link to the slides, I'm very far down on the slides, as Gustavo said, starting with slide 55, or 65, sorry. So what is a design challenge? Well, for us, design challenges use real-world problems to engage learners in the iterative design process. So for those of you who were there earlier this morning for Rick's presentation, he showed the engineering design process from Engineering is Elementary. This is our version of that. We call it the innovation design process. And at its core, we have these pieces of imagine, create, test, and reflect. And we believe that you kind of go through those in an iterative way, and you may come in and come out of them depending on how you're working. So some students and some adults even like to imagine while they're working with materials. They may not do a formal brainstorming process first. Some of them start right away imagining and creating at the same time. And then around those inner pieces are those more metacognitive pieces of defining your problem and sharing your solution. And again, you may come in and out of those depending on the situation. So although we may formally teach this process to students, we recognize that they may have ownership of their own sequencing through it. Our different people are moving through it in their own way. So I might create something, share it with somebody, get some feedback, and then I'm testing and reflecting and beginning to imagine again. On the outer side of that are these innovator mindsets that we've defined. So being bold, being curious, being perseverant, empathetic, and collaborative. And these might also define what we would say a maker is, if we link it back to what Rick was talking about earlier. In the chat, you guys can feel free to add some of your own ideas about how you talk about design process with students. But this is just some information about how we have defined it. And some other things we think about as we're thinking about design challenges are that they're solvable by multiple challenges, multiple solutions. So things will not have a set response. So it's not like a kit that everybody in the class is putting it together and they're all going to come up with the same solution. So one of our favorite design challenges is called Cupcake Delivery, and it's a wind-powered challenge. So students build something that can be powered by wind. Some of them may have devices that have wheels on them and look more like a car. Others might have sail-based things that look more like boats. The solution they come up with works best for them, and they'll iterate on it differently. Similarly, there needs to be opportunities for iteration. So students are testing and improving on their designs. That's really important in the engineering and design process. And then it's connecting to participants' interests and real-world connection to problems in the real world and careers. So a lot of times you'll see a little later, we come up with stories or scenarios that are interesting to students and relate to actual things that are happening in the real world. So I'm going to share these with you now, but I will refer to them again later. These are where we keep a lot of our resources for you all. So you'll see educator resources on the Tech at Home, on the tech.org/resources. You'll see our new site of home resources for parents, and also a great tool for you to send home to students on the tech.org at home, or in CASA. That's the other link as well. So the tech.org at home. And there's parent guides there, videos, small PDFs, other things that you can use to help frame challenges and introduce them to students. So it's enough background and me talking. Feel free to put ideas in the chat of what that sparked with you, but we're going to do a design challenge now. So first I'm going to frame and introduce it, and then I'm going to prototype, imagine, and create, test, and reflect with you. So you're going to do that as well, and then we'll share some solutions and debrief. So if you have any questions as we're going along, please add them in the chat. So what challenge will we do? So the first, I want to introduce it. This challenge is that my child wants to build a tower to communicate with their friends from a distance. And in order to do that, we're going to use some paper, some tape, and you can use scissors or you don't have to. It's optional. So those are the materials and the story in the situation. And hold on just a second. I believe that I need to share this with audio. So I'm going to share another way to introduce this challenge as well. So this is a video. that introduces the challenge to you as well.
I finally found it!
To obtain this item, you must build it
If you
a
can't
tower
hear, let me know.
worthy enough to hold it.
But I only have 5 pieces of paper, 1 foot of tape, and scissors!
It is the only way to go. There is no number 2.
This is the Tech Interactive at Home.
Let's see how high I can get these 5 pieces of paper to go. So first I'm going to try a triangular prism. Folded my paper into 3 sides because triangles tend to be pretty stable. Oh, it's holding up. Maybe not. I might need to cut the surface area down so that the wind doesn't knock it over so easily. I'm definitely going to try to conserve paper here and fold it into smaller pieces. I'll take 3 sticks and build a sort of tripod that will hopefully keep it standing. So I'm creating this structure that will then support the tower. For the tower, I rolled up tubes of paper that fit in smaller tubes of paper so that the tower will stand up tall. It's finally ready.
Your structure is worthy.
I got the treasure! Wait, it's single fly?
So that's another example of how to introduce this challenge. They used 5 pieces of paper in that one, and she used a video story to introduce it that's related to the current situation of trying to find paper in this sort of setting. So think about what are some other ways you might introduce. You'll notice too that you can always change your story and your criteria and constraints to meet your situation and your students' interests. So, and this is a great way to also connect to the real world. So standards can come in this case, or a real world situation about being engineers and working for a company and needing to build based on what would actually happen in a real scenario with a company or an engineering challenge. Okay, so you've been introduced to the challenge. For our sake, your challenge is to create the tallest tower that you can, and we're going to use that story of wanting to communicate with your friends. For our criteria and constraints, your tower has to stand on its own, and you only have 5 minutes to build. I'm going to set my timer. You can only use 1 foot of tape and 3 pieces of paper. So we're going to use 3 pieces of paper and approximately 1 foot of tape. You do not need to measure it. For those of you who are interested in going like a little more beyond that, you can try to do this without tape. If you don't have it, that might be one reason why you have that constraint. And then you want to, if you can try to add a live load to the top of your tower. So your child or that person who's communicating or the communication device has to go on the top of the tower. So I'm going to start my timer now, and I'm going to add Rick back in. He's going to prototype while I'm prototyping. And if anybody's interested in prototyping on screen, let us know. You can also do that. But otherwise, we'll have a way for you to share what you're building at the end. So I'm starting my timer. So, and as you're building, you can also let us know in chat what you're using and what criteria and constraints or challenges you're facing. Sometimes when we're building with students, we use a lot of open-ended questions, and so ways of trying to help students solve their own problems. So these are some examples of how we do that. And in the virtual environment, sometimes maybe setting up a Q&A board for students to ask questions of each other or support each other and ask you questions, or just sending them these questions to answer in journal prompts can also work well. So I was going to test if I could fold it, would it stay up just by itself? I was just curious how my paper will stay up by itself, and that worked for a minute, but not very long. So I'm going to try the rolled technique, and I'm going to do some triangle towers to and see if I can get those to reinforce each other. What techniques are you trying, Rick?
Triangle idea. There's a lot of power power and triangle when it comes to engineering.
And I can get, if I pulled two triangles, they're kind of open, but I can get them to stand up by supporting each other without any tape so far. I haven't gone much beyond the height of the paper itself yet. I'm also putting this up there as some tips for virtual prototyping. You can do something like this where you have your students prototyping on screen with each other if you're able to do live meetings and have them do it synchronously, but you can also have asynchronous prototyping where you send them the instructions or an intro video like that one we just showed, and then have them journal, written journals or photos and videos to capture their process.
And also small groups, if you're able to do it in small groups. That could be
yeah, there's still opportunities for collaboration even though you're working virtually, I think. And depending on the age, that can work really well too.
It's a big part of, big part of the engineering process is being able to work with others and collaborate with others to come up with your solutions. So I think having kids do that the best you can, virtually would be pretty cool.
Yeah, and when you're done, if you feel like you're gonna, at the end of this, just a heads up, we're gonna pop your, we have a link to a slide deck. I don't know, Gustavo, if you can throw that in the chat for folks. You're gonna take a picture of yours and put it in that slide deck to share your creation. So there's a sample there, and then you can put yours and what you were thinking when you made it, challenges you faced. A lot of times for sharing, we have students share what their intent was, because it doesn't always turn out the way you intended. And then, what they would do if they had more time. The idea is that when you're prototyping, of course, you're not focused on the final solution, you're focused on the process a lot of times for us. So that means that there doesn't need to be a fear of failure, because whatever you build, you're learning from. So there isn't a final solution that's going to be amazing. You're doing your best. And the fact that you can explain your process is what's important. Okay, I think I got some more height, but it's not very stable. Let's see if I switch it. It's doing better. And by the way, on timing, we have about 1 minute left on my timer. So for those of you who are prototyping along with us, you have about a minute left. And again, it doesn't matter if you've got it working, because we're going to share what we've got either way. Oh, it stayed up. That's exciting.
Awesome.
Here's those questions again for you. Oh, but not in wind. We didn't add that. We didn't add that challenge in. That could be the next iteration. Will it stay standing if the wind blows?
Yeah, good. That's a great 2.0.
Yeah. Okay, you guys, 20 seconds left. And again, when you think you've got it going, you can add your things into the slide deck. And feel free to put in chat too what you're working on. Oh, there's my timer. Okay.
It's harder than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, it is. I sometimes think less is more. We've done this challenge with one piece of paper before, and in some ways I feel like that's easier because you have less options. Okay, so if we have gallery view, and we can attempt this at this time, if you're willing to be brave and bold and share what you've been working on, even if it doesn't work, this is how you do it in Zoom, but for the purposes of this panel, you can just click that blue button at the top to ask to share your video and audio. So if you're willing to join Rick and I in sharing, Carol looks like she's brave enough to join. Thank you. And Sean, thank you.
Good. Be bold.
Great. And while we share, we're going to look at these kind of questions. So you can pop your answers to this in the chat too. How were our towers similar or different? How did they create stability? And how did we get height with our structures? Let's see. How about Rick? Do you want to go first?
Sure.
Tell us what you built, and then maybe what you would do if you had more time.
Yeah, I thought this was going to be a lot sturdier than it was. I've actually got a window open, so I have a little breeze coming too. So it's really getting kind of tested here with the real elements. But I just created about a 20-inch triangular tower here and just taped it to the base like this. It's pretty janky, just came down already. But I think you realize the importance of your foundation. And my wife's already given me tips across the room on how I could have done this better. So,
Excellent. So you've got feedback right in your
she's
environment.
laughing at me. Yeah, she's.
That's great.
Yeah. So anyway,
thank you.
I want to see Sean and Carol.
Yeah, Sean, what did you build? Do you want to share
Sean's
yours with us?
solid.
Yeah.
So I took the paper and I made, I cut it into strips like this big, and then I rolled those diagonally to make the little stands there. And then I took the two other papers and rolled and then put that together. They like fit together right there. So I've done the marshmallow challenge before, and I know the key is a triangle at the base.
Yeah.
And then one iteration on that marshmallow challenge, you can do the marshmallow challenge where you give them 26, but then if you give them one piece of paper, they can realize they can make a cylinder to make it really, really long. So that's a nice little addition for them.
Thank you.
Cool, that's awesome.
So what would you do if you had more time?
I would have, I don't know. I probably would have been more precise about how I rode the stem part of it to make it just a little bit longer. And I would have glued and I would have taped in my base a little bit more, because then you could have made this part thinner.
Thank you. I'm impressed with your height. Carol, you want to share with us?
So can you hear me?
Yeah.
So I was going for comfort for sending messages to her friend.
Yeah.
So I did a little subtractive stuff with putting holes and things.
Ooh, okay.
Oh,
yeah, and then I have my live load.
It's like yeah.
Oh, well, with one more second, I could have taped the tops together.
Yeah, that's excellent. I love that.
And that's two pieces of paper. So with more time, I would have put another layer up. And this was from my tomato plant supports. The idea was from that.
Oh, excellent.
Nice.
Cool.
Excellent real world application of
Really
things
good.
you've seen around you.
Yeah, so there it is.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Rick, Sean, and Carol for prototyping with us. Thank you all.
Yeah. Sean and Carol, they rocked it. So good job.
Yes, thank you. Everybody give them a virtual round of applause. I'm gonna also check on the slides. I think there was at least one person in there who, oops, wrong slides.
I don't know.
Oh, I guess they figured it out. So I'm gonna check on the gallery walk slides. I think we have one person here, it looks like, who made a floppy tower. Is made out of paper, and we got a great student participant, Isabella of 11, so that's excellent. You guys can feel free to keep using the slides here and adding to it if you enjoy the challenge and want to add to this sharing slide deck. Please feel free to. I'm gonna go back again to my main slides. Oh, never mind.
You know, Amy, I think this activity really illustrates the power of triangles. You know, and it's just something kids learn at a pretty early age, whether you're building a bridge or whatever, but having that 45-degree angle, I mean, it makes all the difference when it comes to support. And, you know, something like this can help the kids discover that on their own.
Yeah, you'll notice, like, if we look at a couple of these examples here, a lot of them use triangles.
Yeah, I mean, both Carol and
design.
Sean utilized triangles in different ways. Carol was the tripod, you know, the classic tripod look. And, you know, and Sean's that triangular support at the bottom. Yeah, it looked really sturdy. It was impressive.
Yeah. So when we just did a sharing, we tried two techniques. One was that document where people can post things. And then we also did the gallery walk sort of style and had people share live. So those are some of the techniques. There's a lot of other ways you can share as well. And we have some tech tips. I've been putting these in the slide deck that folks can access from our website that are just general tips on how to do sharing solutions. So we have PDF resources and videos there that folks can watch. One thing I encourage people to think about that's an opportunity in some ways for virtual is like, how can you share with a broader community than you normally do? You're not limited by location anymore. So how can you connect with community members or real life engineers or others who can be part of your virtual showcase and hear and learn from what you're doing. And they can be judges or they can just be participants and see and give feedback to your students.
And that could be part of the, the investigative part, even before you start your building, is, hearing from experts and, doing kind of the research ahead of time, to see how others have approached that, that similar problem.
Yeah, it can definitely, we've included that idea of expert interviews like early on when you're researching a problem, and then also later on as well. Somebody's asking in the chat what silent awesomeness is. That's something that's similar to like a gallery walk. If you were doing it in a classroom, you'd often do it by having students put their devices on a table and then having them walk around and give each other Post-it notes with feedback on them. If you're doing that virtually, it might just be like the slide deck that we just showed sort of. So have students put their picture and their comments on there, and then other students can add feedback. I sometimes like to, Padlet can be good for that too. Yeah, it depends on what tools you have available to you. I sometimes like to use framing for feedback. So something like a wow and a wonder, or, I think I've heard rose and thorn or goals and gains. Those kind of things can help frame feedback for students, especially younger ones. So we just did a whole design challenge. I was going to have everybody debrief a little bit about it for those who could participate or even just watching it. What pieces of the experience stood out for those participating or watching? You can put that in the chat. And then the big question is, like, as educators, how would you adjust or adapt this challenge for your setting? So you can just put your comments in the chat. If you want to have them appear live on my screen, you can try Poll Everywhere. It's this Poll EV link, or you can text the response if you want to try that. But you can also just put your ideas in chat. So how would you adjust this to your own situation and your setting? So somebody was talking about a shared spreadsheet to track heights. That's a great way to bring in some of those math skills as well. You could be collecting data and analyzing it. We've actually, for some of our challenges, we've built in Google Science Journal. For those who haven't used that before, that's a great data collection tool. It has built-in accelerometers and noise sensors and other kinds of sensors. So it's a fun way to introduce sensors to students before getting them in the mechanics of building it and connecting it themselves. Any other ideas about how you would adjust this challenge for your own setting? What would you do to adapt it? I'll let you put your ideas in chat because we're running low on time, but I just wanted to add in some more tips on virtual settings. So a lot of times when we do these challenges virtually, you're going to maybe assign it at the beginning of the week and provide some instructions, and then have opportunities for connecting it with around it throughout the week, a mixture of synchronous and asynchronous interactions. And parents sometimes need a lot of support. It depends on your situation, but that's why we've created a lot of parent tips and materials for them. And then varying the length and topics depending on situations. I just wanted to put in a final reminder that you are learning and iterating too, so be flexible with yourself. I know as we enter the school year, everybody is dealing with a lot. So just remember you're testing and reflecting and learning as you go. I put a bunch of resources links in the beginning, and I'll put them in again, but some I wanted to call out. That materials treasure hunt I put in the chat link earlier. We also just came out with an engineering for earthquakes lesson plan, home guide, and video. And then cupcake delivery is one of our favorites. It works well for multiple settings. And there's a bunch of virtual professional development webinars we have saved on our site as well, in addition to lesson plans, all the guides and resources I mentioned earlier. So.
Thank you. Thank you, Amy and Rick. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for everyone watching, all 26 of you, and those who had the courage to jump on the screen. Those are some amazing towers. I'm not as courageous enough to show mine, but there was a little bit of height that, and I shouldn't have a fan on while I do this, just kind of my reflection. We will now have a short break for about 4 more minutes, and then you can join us in general session. Don't forget to refresh this page on your browser to access the people feature on the top right and direct message each other and share contact information. So take some time to stretch, review the agenda, or head over to the expo to visit some of our wonderful exhibitors who are eager to meet you and who are giving away some fun prizes. You can also go to the networking area to meet someone new and have a quick chat. You can find that down below or to the side. And thank you all for being here today. See you soon. And Rick and Amy, if you're okay with sticking around for about 3 more minutes, you can go back to that Q&A, and then we'll end the session and close it out fairly soon. So thank you again. So we will be closing the session in about 3 minutes, but we will have Amy and Rick who are generous enough to stick around for a few more minutes. So thank you, everybody, and we'll see you in the general session in about 3 minutes.
Awesome. Thanks, Gustavo.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Thanks for your moderation.
Yeah, definitely.